It was a stormy night, and the wind howled as I unwrapped the Sackboy doll, its mismatched button eyes staring into my soul. "What are you doing here, little guy?" I chuckled nervously, my heart racing. I set the doll on a dusty shelf, trying to brush off the unsettling feeling it gave me. As I turned to leave, a creaking sound echoed from behind me. "Just the house settling," I muttered to myself. That night, as I lay in bed, I was jolted awake by a soft giggle. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence answered me, but the air felt electric with anticipation. I convinced myself it was just my imagination, but the next day the doll had moved on its own, now perched on the edge of my bed, staring back at me. "Okay, this is getting weird," I said aloud, trying to remain calm. As the days passed, the doll became a fixture in my life, its eerie presence almost comforting. But I started hearing whispers, barely audible yet filled with urgency. "Help us. Help me." One night, driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, I held the doll close and whispered, "What do you want?" Suddenly the room went cold, and I felt a rush of energy flood through me. Its stitched smile was crooked, curling higher on one side, making it look more like a sneer than a grin. I tossed the doll into a box with some other old toys, figuring I'd deal with it later. That night, I heard footsteps creaking across the hardwood floor. At first, I thought it was the house settling. It was old, after all. But these footsteps were deliberate, starting at one end of the hallway and stopping just outside my bedroom door. I froze, clutching my blanket. There were no further sounds. In the morning, I found nothing out of place, and I convinced myself I'd imagined it. That was until I went back to the basement to finish cleaning. The Sackboy doll wasn't in the box where I'd left it. I searched the entire basement, thinking maybe I'd accidentally thrown it somewhere else, but it was gone. That was when I noticed something odd. On the dusty floor leading up the stairs were small, shoe-like footprints. They were far too small to belong to any human. That night, I locked my bedroom door. The footsteps came again, louder this time. They stopped at my door, and then the handle began to rattle. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I found the Sackboy doll sitting on the kitchen counter. It was holding one of my knives, its tiny hands wrapped tightly around the hilt. I stared at it, my heart pounding. Was someone playing a prank on me? Was I losing my mind? I grabbed the doll and threw it into the garbage outside, stuffing it deep under layers of trash. I wasn't taking any chances. That night, I heard the footsteps again. But this time, they didn't stop at my door. I woke up to the sound of something scratching at my bed frame. I turned on the lamp, and there it was, the Sackboy doll sitting on my nightstand, its head tilted toward me. The knife was gone, but one of its button eyes was dangling by a thread as if it had been through something. I didn't know what else to do. I grabbed the doll and drove it out to the woods as far away from the house as I could manage. I buried it in a shallow grave under a tree and left without looking back. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully, until the smell woke me. A rancid, putrid stench filled the room, like rotting flesh and stagnant water. I gagged, stumbling out of bed to turn on the light. The Sackboy doll was there, sitting on the floor by the door. Its stitching was undone in places, and I could see something black and oozing inside it, like tar. The dangling button eye was now gone entirely, leaving an empty hole that seemed to stare right at me. And then it moved.